Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word around. You're all excited, we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town.
All right, who can tell me what this guy's name is? What is this guy's name? Not Jesus. Not Jesus. Wait. It's not wait. Amberlynn, what's his name? What? It's Joseph? How many think this guy's name is Joseph? You think his name is Joseph? You are right. You're right. Now, what do we see about this man Joseph? Where is he? He's in jail. That's right. He's in jail. Why is he in jail? Why is he in jail? Lucas?
He got bought, and the person that bought him, his wife said that he tried to,
Yeah. So he got bought, and he was a servant, and his boss's wife tried to get him to play around with her, and then when he wouldn't, she accused him of doing nasty things. And so he got put in jail. He was bought. Why was he bought? Why was Joseph bought? Brianna?
because his brothers hated him.
His brothers hated him. So his brothers hated him, and that's why he was bought. Something is in the middle there, right?
Yeah.
Peyton, do you know? He became a slave.
His brothers sold him.
His brothers sold him. They captured him. They threw him in a pit. Then they saw some merchants, and so they pulled him out of the pit, and they sold him to the merchants, and the merchants brought him down to what country? What country was he in? Where did they take him, and they sold him? What country was he in? Do you know, Kurt? You weren't here when we said this, I don't think. Maybe you did. Maybe you were. Ian knows the story. So Ian, you tell us, what country was he sold in?
Egypt.
He was in Egypt. Was that what you were going to say? Yeah. He was in Egypt. Did he? So this man's name is Joseph. And in the New Testament, the verse we had before this, listen up here. The verse we had before this, a man was preaching about Joseph, and the man said, but God was with him and delivered him out of all his afflictions. Remember us learning that verse? So if God was with him, and he ends up in Egypt. Is he from Egypt? Is he around his family? No. And so then he's made a servant, but God was with him. And how was God with him when he was the servant? How was God with him when he was the servant? Josh. Well, God is everywhere, but how did God help him? How did God help Joseph while he was the servant? Maybe I didn't say it because no one's. He was just a servant, and his boss came to him and did what? Made him work. Made him work. Made him in charge of everything. Right. God blessed Joseph, and God let him be in charge of everything. But then his master's wife lied about him, and so his master put him in the prison, which in another place the Bible calls it a dungeon. Now, I want you to imagine with me. Imagine that you are Joseph. And you are in the dungeon, in the prison. What kind of thoughts would go through your head? Can you imagine what thoughts would go through your head? KK, what do you think? Don't know? Okay. What? Suicidal? I don't know if he would have had suicidal thoughts. because there's other things about him that would maybe keep him from that. You think you know what he was thinking? What do you think? What do you think? Okay, you think he might have thought about his dad?
Yeah.
He's in? What do we know about his dad? Luke?
His dad loved him more than
His
any
dad
other
loved him so much. What do you think he might have thought about?
And his dad was sad for the rest of his life.
His dad was sad for the rest of. Did he know that? He probably didn't even know that. But he probably thought about his dad. He might have thought, I wonder if my dad is still alive. It's been many years now since he's been gone. You think he thought about his brothers?
No. No. Yeah.
He might have. He might have thought, I wonder if if they ever wonder where I am.
Yeah.
He might have thought, do you remember that he had some dreams when he was younger?
Yes.
What were those dreams about?
All of things about nowadays.
Yeah, did that ever come true yet?
No.
So he's sitting there in prison. Maybe he thought about those dreams. I wonder, are those dreams really from God? Will that ever happen? How will that ever happen if I'm in jail? How will my brothers come and bow down before me? I don't know. He probably thought about a lot of different things. But do you think he thought about God? The Bible says God was with him. We know that Joseph was a godly man. So if he thought about God, do you think he prayed to God?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think he asked God to help him?
Yes.
And do you think God helped Joseph?
Yes.
Yes. God helped Joseph. God was with him when he was a servant. And God was with him when he was in jail. Now, I think Ian knows this story, so I'm not going to let you say it, Ian. But does anyone else? What do you think? How would God be with somebody who's in jail? Do you know? What do you think? What do you think happened to Joseph while he was in jail that shows us that God was with him? Got any ideas? It's almost like when he was a servant. Brianna? God is everywhere, and Joseph loved God, and God was there, but how did God help him? The Bible says God was with him and delivered him out of all his afflictions. Our verse now says we know that all things work together for good. Does anybody know? Ian, you want to tell us? No? Do you not remember right now? You forgot right now? Okay, so after a while, the guy in charge in the jail, he noticed. Who do you think he noticed? Joseph. When all the prisoners had jobs to do, Joseph worked hard. All the prisoners did their jobs right, and Joseph did their jobs, and Joseph did his job right. And pretty soon, the man in charge of the prison went to Joseph, and who was Joseph? He's a prisoner, and he said, look, I want you to be in charge of all the rest of the prisoners in the jail. Well, that's a lot better than sitting in a room all by yourself. He got to walk around. He had to, get the food and deliver it to all the servants. He got to talk to all the prisoners. He got to talk to all the different prisoners, and he talked to them. And he probably told them his story. He probably told them how he shouldn't have been there. Of course, everybody in jail thinks they shouldn't be there, right? But something was different about Joseph. And he helped, and he served down there. And one day, 2 prisoners were delivered to the jail. The Bible tells us about these 2 in particular. And they were the king's baker and the king's butler. Now, the king's butler served the king. Everything that came to the king, he would take it and arrange it, and he would serve the king his food, serve him his drink, all of that. And the king's baker, of course, he would cook the king's food. And so the king was upset with them, and he delivered them to jail. And the Bible says that the man in charge of the jail said to Joseph, take care of these 2 guys. And so they were in jail, and they were in there for a while. They were in there for a while, and one day, Joseph came upon them, and they were extra sad. Now, I don't think anybody would be happy being in jail, but this one was clear, they were really upset. And so Joseph, he talked to all the prisoners, and he talked to them and said, "Why is it that you're so much extra sad today?" And they began to tell him a story. Now listen to this story. The one man, the butler, said, "Well, we have both dreamed dreams, and these dreams are so much alike that we know they mean something. But we don't have any idea what they mean. But we know they mean something, and it's troubling us. We cannot figure it out." And Joseph said, "Well, don't you know that dreams and the interpretation of dreams belongs to God?" And they all knew that Joseph believed in God. And Joseph said, "Why don't you tell them to me? And maybe I'll know what they mean." And so the butler, he said, in my dream, there was a branch, and there's a vine. There was a vine, and there was 3 branches on the vine. And in my dream, does anything ever make sense in a dream? Have you guys had dreams? They don't really make sense. So in this dream, all of a sudden there was 3 branches, and then all of a sudden there was buds, and then there was flowers, and then there was grapes. Right away. And he said, "I got this vine with 3 branches, and they budded, and they brought forth fruit, and then I squeezed the juice out of the grapes into the king's cup. And the king's cup was in my hand." And Joseph said, "This is what your dream means. The 3 branches are 3 days. And in 3 days, you are going to be brought up out of jail back into the king's palace, and the king is going to give you back your position, and you are going to serve the king everything that he wants, just like you were before. And when you get there, will you do me a favor? You know I'm a good guy. And you know I did nothing to come down here. I was sold here. I'm a Hebrew, sold here out of Canaan, and I did nothing to deserve to be in jail. Say something to the king so that he will let me out of jail." And the butler said, "You got it. If this comes true, like you say, I for sure will say something to the king for you." Well, the baker thought, "Well, that's a pretty good dream. Let me tell you my dream." And the baker said, I was in my dream too. And in my dream, there was 3 baskets on top of my head. And in the top basket was all kinds of bread and biscuits and rolls and things like that. And in my basket, birds came along and they ate the bread out of my basket. And Joseph said, "This is what your dream means. The 3 baskets, what do you think they are?"
3 days.
3 days. They are 3 days. So in 3 days, the king is going to bring you up out of jail. But the birds, they represent something else. He's not going to put you back in your position. He's going to execute you. He's going to hang you, and the birds are going to come and eat your flesh. That is not a very good dream. But, well, I wonder what happened. 3 days later, somebody came to the jail and opened up the door, and you think their hearts were going like this? And they said, "We need the butler and the baker." Well, that part came true, didn't it? So the butler and baker are going out, and the butler's probably thinking, 3 days? That was true. I hope the rest of it's true, right? And the baker was, 3 days. That was true. I hope the rest is not true, right? And what do you think Joseph was thinking? I hope the butler says something to the king for me, right? Well, what do you think happened? Did it come true just the way God had said in the dream?
Yes.
It did. The butler went up there, and the king said, "Butler, I'm so glad to see you again. It's my birthday today." Remember that. It's my birthday today, and we're going to have a great big so the butler was able to go back to his position and serve the king. And the baker, the king was upset with him. And he said, you have done wrong, and you are going to die. And the baker died. And the very last verse in Genesis chapter 40, which we didn't turn to, but the very last verse in Genesis chapter 40 says something. It says, the butler, who's the butler? The one that lived, right? It says the butler did not say something to the king, but he forgot about Joseph. So where's Joseph?
In jail.
He's still in jail. Yeah? But what does our verse say? And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. It sure seemed like it was working out. God sent those two men into jail and gave them the dream after a while, and Joseph told them their dreams, and so now the one that lived was going to be able to tell the king about Joseph. It's all working out, wasn't it? But he forgot. You think God messed up?
No.
Our verse says that God doesn't mess up. And we're going to have to come back next week to see how it is that God works it all together. There's a reason that Joseph needed to be in jail for a little bit longer, which tells you that he's going to get out of jail, but not yet. Next week we'll find out when and how he gets out of jail.